straight from the mayor's mouth, with Matthew Dickerson from Dubbo Regional Council.
Hello everyone and welcome to Straight from the Mayor's Mouth. Well, Matt, hard to believe that 2.5 years ago, whatever it was, when we sat down there and we started to first discuss the whole idea of doing this podcast, that 100 podcasts later we'd still be at it. So happy birthday.
Yeah, happy anniversary, 100th anniversary, 100 episodes. And I don't think there were any episodes that were less than an hour long. We tried to keep it to an hour, but sometimes we just kept talking and talking and talking.
Oh, no. Yeah, so, was that me or was that you kept talking all the time?
Well, I was going to blame you, but sometimes there was so much information.
There's a lot of stuff to get through each week, wasn't there? Yes.
And the whole idea of this came about because one of the bits of feedback I received from some people in our community was that they'd hear some radio interviews, and on radio, you're obviously limited. You might have 10 minutes, 12 minutes, depending on which radio station it was, to go through the various topics. And, of course, I'm often doing those weekly, sometimes fortnightly, and the host might be talking to you and you're just briefly touching on a few of those topics. And I'd run into someone sometimes and they'd say, oh, I heard you talking about whatever it was. I wouldn't mind a bit more information about that. And I thought, gee, I'd love more time. But, of course, on radio, you can't because people are just going along there listening to music or they want some different talk back with different people.
Yep.
So I thought, well, podcast gives you the ability to really talk as long as you like, sometimes maybe too long you might argue, about the topic. So I thought that'd be an interesting way to go about it. And the feedback has been good. I've got one person who said it's the perfect time it comes out. They go for their Sunday morning bike ride and they just put the podcast on and catch up with what's happened around council. So that's been good. And so I've received different bits of feedback. And I know there are some absolutely religious listeners to it who will not miss it each week. And so
it's lovely to those people out there, isn't it? Eh?
Yeah, we've managed to get it out. 10 a.m. each Sunday is when it's launched typically. There's been a couple of times for a whole variety of reasons where it hasn't quite been 10 a.m. each Sunday, but gee, I reckon 97 of the episodes came out at 10 a.m. on Sunday.
Absolutely it did, yeah.
So this is pretty significant, I think. And of course, as you know, this is the only mayoral podcast in the nation, only regular mayoral podcast. There's certainly no other mayor that does this on a weekly basis. I know some other mayors I've spoken to who've talked to me about this and asked about this. They've sometimes said, I love the idea. I was on a podcast recently or I got interviewed for a podcast, but it's not every single week. It's not regular. It's not even every single month. So it's a really good way of communicating. And out of 637 councils and mayors, although some I think are still called shire presidents in some areas, but let's call them all mayors for the moment. Out of 637, this is it in terms of that level of communication.
That's great. That's
so
unreal.
I think it's good.
I think the other thing is as well, mate, is the fact that, as I say, look, 100 podcasts, and we haven't missed a week with that. Even when, we've been in sort of distant sort of places, sometimes you've been running up, some of those hills down there in Sydney, we still managed to get the podcast done. Sometimes I'm overseas and doing sort of stuff, but you've still managed to get the podcast rolling. So congratulations to you. 100 podcasts, that's a real sense of achievement.
Well,
but
when
of course,
you think about any podcast,
you're right.
That's significant when you talk about someone who's got a podcast. Oh, I've got this podcast going. And sometimes they get excited about it and they might run 10, 20 episodes, might run it for a little while, and then it's hard work. You've got to be really committed to it for that every single week. And, it's right, as you trip all around the world and wherever you might be, it's hard to make sure we can line them all up. But, I think it's quite significant. So, well done. Thank you for your help in getting there and these 100 podcasts. And I think
it's been a pleasure, buddy. It really has. And I love the fact, too, that we've managed to sort of hit the 100th podcast right smack bam at the end of this term of council.
Well, we snuck in a little bit early. I just said that we normally launch it at 10 a.m. Sunday mornings. The date today, as we're recording this, is the 13th of September. Now, I'm not going to launch this one on the 15th of September. I'm going to do it on the 13th because on a technicality, at midnight tonight on Friday the 13th of September, then I cease to be a councillor, which means I cease to be the mayor. So we couldn't really launch it on Sunday morning and say straight from the mayor's mouth because it might have been recorded.
For starters, that's it.
That's right. It might have been recorded when I was mayor, but on the Sunday, I'm not going to be the mayor. So we're going to record it now after we finish this busy week, and then I'll launch it tonight. So this will be an unusual one because all the councillors cease to be councillors on the 14th. And it's an interesting one because if I go back to the historical process where in 2012, I was the mayor in 2012 before the council election that happened that year, and the mayor of the day, which had happened in previous years as well when there's election on, the mayor of the day remained the mayor of the day and kept going past the election until the first meeting of council when the new mayor was elected. So in other words, the Local Government Act said the mayor is the mayor until a new mayor is elected.
Yeah, right.
So that meant that in 2012, I stayed on as the mayor. If I hadn't have been elected or if I hadn't have stood for council, for example, or whatever happened, I would still be the mayor until that next election.
So you still had to have turned up in that capacity of mayor, even if you hadn't have decided to stand.
Correct, that's right.
Right, okay.
And then once the election happened and I was re-elected to council, then even if I wasn't planning on standing to be mayor, I'd still be the mayor until that election. As it turned out, I did intend to be mayor. I did stand for election to be mayor and was elected as mayor. So that's a bit different. They've changed that now, and the mayor's no longer the mayor, which is a bit frustrating because I've got some people that would like the mayor of the day to come along and launch an event, cut a ribbon, welcome people to Dubbo, all the normal things that I do. And I've had to say to those people over the next couple of weeks, sorry, there's no mayor. I'm not going to be the mayor, and there's no one in council that will undertake those civic and ceremonial duties until approximately the 3rd of October when, if everything goes well in the counting of the election, then on the 3rd of October you'll have the first meeting of council to elect the mayor, whoever that may be, whether it's me or someone else. So that at that point in time, you'll then have someone to continue on with that. Right. So that's changed.
Yeah.
I can only assume that some mayor out there who had all this unbelievable power with no councillors to answer to and had this 2 or 2.5 week period went and did some silly things. That's the only reason I can possibly think of that might have been the case, that they might have said, sorry, we don't like those rules, we're going to change those rules. So as of midnight tonight, I'm not the mayor, and so we've got to launch this tonight.
Absolutely. It's our very final 100th podcast for this term. All right, let's get the ball rolling then. Let's start us off there. And even though, despite the fact you've had a very, very busy week this week with all the stuff leading up and towards the elections for this Saturday, like everyone else standing for council, you still managed to get in a few of your civic duties. The very first one here was the fact you caught up with our local state member in Dugald Saunders. So, good old Doug. So you caught up with Dugald. So this has always been a regular thing for you, hasn't it?
It has. It's a regular meeting that I have with the state member. Back when I was mayor before, I used to meet with Troy Grant on a regular basis. I do the same with Dugald Saunders and with Mark Coulton. Because he's got such a big area and he's not in Dubbo all the time, I do it on a less regular basis, but it's certainly on a regular basis. But yeah, Dugald, the local member, it's good just to talk to him about things that are happening at council so that he's across those areas. Just to hear what's happening from a state government perspective. It might be new grant programs, there might be a different direction they're taking in certain things, but it's really just that ongoing discussion. And with so many of the meetings that we talked about, some of those number of meetings last week, but with so many of those meetings, it's really about just keeping that relationship solid, making sure you're discussing things when you don't necessarily have something urgent to discuss, but you keep that relationship going so that if I do need to talk to the local member about whatever, then you've got that relationship. It might be something that's bad, it might be something that's good, but you might need some help, but you've got that ongoing relationship rather than, oh, well, Matt, gee, the only time you ring me is when you need some help from me. So it's just that ongoing discussion. So it's good, it's healthy. Normally there'll be one of his staff that comes along. If there's anything to follow up on, then he can chase that up for us and find out information. And sometimes it's just, where's that bridge opening up to, or how you're progressing on this. Or sometimes people make inquiries with a local member, and those inquiries might be more council related. So Dukes might send those through to me, for example, or he might just send an email through to our staff or myself and just ask for some information on that. But it might be just an opportunity. Oh, I was talking to someone the other day and they wanted to know what was happening with this particular area. Can you give me some information? And it's handy for him to know as well, because when he's out talking to people, he's got better information about where things are up to. It might be about some of the bridges that we've been fixing up lately. It might be some roads program. It might be some of the renewables and what's happening with those. But it is good to keep those relationships going.
Is there a part of this relationship? Does Dugald, or for that matter, if it wasn't Dugald, any sort of state members in that situation, are they available to assist us with grant applications through with the state governments?
Not really grant applications. That would be more our staff to do that. But sometimes
they like to
awareness.
assist us and to promote those sort of things. And
sorry, I misunderstood. So yes, if it was something where we've put a grant in, that's exactly what we would do. We would say to Dugald, we've put an application for this grant. Here's our story in terms of why we need the money for that grant.
Yep.
And can you make sure next time the minister is within earshot, you have a bit of a talk to the minister and tell him or her what's going on with this and how important it is for Dubbo. So absolutely from that perspective.
Yeah.
And that's again where that relationship's important,
Yeah.
just so he knows. So to give you a simple example, we've got, it's not a grant application because there's no grant process, but we've got a business case for lengthening and strengthening the runway. We received money from the state government, the coalition state government, to do that business case. So we've done that business case, and we need maybe in the vicinity of $60 million to lengthen and strengthen that runway, largely based on the Rural Fire Service firefighting capabilities.
Yep.
We've got the RJ85, which we've talked about before, parked out there, and I think they've got one season left of that. But then the RFS planes that are owned by the RFS, if they stop that ongoing process with the RJ85, which comes from Canada, then with the 737s the RFS uses, they can't land and take off. They can probably land if they're empty, but taking off full of the fire retardant, they're not going to be able to take off with the length of our runway, and it will be too heavy for our runway. So that's an application. Now, when we put that, well, again, not an application, we sent our business case through to the Minister, Jihad Dib, and talked to him about that. And then we went to Sydney and met with Jihad, but we asked Dugald to come along, so he came along for that meeting as well. So we met with our local member to add support, with Jihad Dib, the Minister, who we were pitching this to for, and say, here's how this would work, and we've got the local member there as well. Now, Jihad in that particular meeting said, okay, Dugald, you used to be in government. Where would you go for this money? We don't have that money sitting around loose change that we can just throw out Dubbo's way. Where would you go? So it was actually quite helpful to have Dugald in that conversation with the state government.
Yeah, nice. I like that. I like the fact that that's another very active role, sort of with two levels of government working together for a common cause.
You'll always get better outcomes, I think, when you don't butt heads with different levels of government, but you try and work with them. And sometimes you don't agree with them, but I don't agree with everything Dugald says, but I'll have that conversation behind closed doors. I don't think there's any value in me being on the front page of the paper saying that Dugald's an idiot and he should be doing this differently. I'd rather have those discussions behind closed doors, and you can still disagree, but do it in a polite way. I don't think there's any need to be butting heads.
Absolutely. Now, speaking of, should I say, some of the meetings that you have on a regular basis, I know that you catch up with with Tim Chin down there with the police department here in town. You caught up again with Tim during the week. You catch up with Tim every 3 months, is that right? Yeah,
usually. Sometimes we might have other meetings that are in between those 3 months, but we just have a regular locked-in quarterly meeting just for an update, catch up, see how things are going. If there's something else that happens, we might meet with him on a more regular basis, or it might just be a phone call to him. But again, the frustrating part is that I don't control the police. The council doesn't control the police. Tim's very polite and a very nice gentleman, and is more than happy to have conversations with us and discuss what's happening. Yeah. But I know the response I would get, and I wouldn't do it anyway. But if I went and said, Tim, I need you to do this, then he would have every right to say, sorry, Matt, I don't answer to you. That's lovely for that request, but have a nice day. And again, I wouldn't do it because I know it's not my place to do that. But we do talk about a whole range of things, including crime stats. And one of the things that was in this latest meeting was interesting but frustrating. We know that BOXAR, the Bureau of Crime Stats and Research, has a process where they release the stats from a quarterly report. They look at all the data from across the state and they release that on a quarterly basis. Now, the last quarterly report would be to the end of June. That was the last quarter. So you'd expect that to come out sometime after June.
Maybe July, or even very latest August maybe.
Yeah, maybe a few weeks, maybe a month or so to get that data. One of the chats we had with Tim during the week was he's got access to some of the preliminary data, not the final data. And so he shared some of that with us, which I can't share on this podcast because it's not public. But the BOXAR report for the June quarter is still not out. As we speak on the 13th of September, still not out. It probably won't be out till next week sometime. So maybe from the week beginning the 15th of September, that data might be out. But it seems frustrating because if the police make some changes, if the judicial system makes some changes, if there are things that happen and then, I wonder if that's made a difference. I wonder if there's any impact at all. We better wait 3 months for the end of the quarter and then another 2.5 months to get that data to actually have a look at that. Now, there was a significant change made on the 4th of April.
Right. What was that?
That was in relation to and I should get the exact wording here, but if someone is a repeat offender, the magistrate essentially has to be convinced that things have changed enough in their life that they're not going to commit offence again. If not, then maybe they don't get bail. Maybe they have to go and spend some time somewhere. Now, to give you an idea, for example, someone breaks into someone's house, they're caught, they go before the magistrate, first offence, they've got a story as a reason to why, terrible home life, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
But I don't want to trivialise that, but I don't know the details of that. But when you then look at that, the magistrate says you're able to be bailed, so that's fine. Don't do it again. If that person then comes back, that young person then comes back before the magistrate within a certain period of time, presumably, and they've committed a related offence, it's called, then the magistrate has to be convinced. Now, are they convinced? If the person says, I'm coming out of my home where mum and dad might be, or mum or dad or whoever I'm looked after, and I'm going back to that same location, the magistrate would say, well, sorry, I don't see how your behaviour is going to change if you're going back to the same environment you've just come from. So I'm sorry, no bail. If they said, well, he was living in this particular location and this was his aunt he's living with, now he's going to move to somewhere in Sydney and he's living with his uncle, and the magistrate would say, okay, I'll allow you to be bailed because your living conditions have changed enough that there should be a good enough reason there that you're not going to commit that offence again. So it's one of the things that I think we've often talked about it, that may be the biggest impact you could have on crime would be the judicial system changing some of the laws, which obviously is not within the powers of local government, not the powers of council.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm very keen to see the results of the latest crime stats come out to see whether or not this has actually had an impact. So that's almost the entire last quarter. April 4th, that was changed.
Yep.
So it's almost the entire last quarter. So, has that had any change? Has that made things better? Well, we'll find out in a week's time. Not on this podcast, though, because we won't be here in a week's time. Yeah.
But, it is really interesting because, look, there's over the course of this current term, crime has been one of those points of discussion. It's been raised a fair bit within community discussion, forums, on social network pages and all this sort of stuff. I would suggest the fact that the Tim Chin would be far better placed to understand the nature of crime in Dubbo than you or me. You know, he's there at the coalface every single day with these guys working it.
Yeah.
Yet you yourself, Matt, have been accused by certain members of the community about the fact that, that there's no crime in Dubbo. Now, I don't ever recall you actually ever making that statement to me, and I'm certainly pretty sure the fact you haven't ever made that statement. But what's your take on all of this in regards to crime here in Dubbo?
It's always popular, isn't it, to say, I'm going to fix crime. I'm going to have a crime summit, or I'm going to solve crime problems, or no more crime. They're very popular statements. And if I could stop crime, wow, that would be fantastic. And I've said it before to people, I'd be lying if I said to anyone, oh yes, as Mayor of Dubbo Regional Council, I can stop crime or I can prevent crime. We simply don't have the powers or the levers to do that, as we've talked about with the judicial system and with the police. Let's both under the state government control.
Yeah.
And you're right, I've never said there's no crime.
Yep.
What I have done is said, let's not talk up crime. Let's not go out there and say, gee, it's bad, we need to do something about it, because, and I've heard this feedback from businesses, hospitality, tourism businesses in particular, don't get out there on the front page of the paper or on some national news program and start talking about how bad the crime is, because people will then say, I'm not visiting Dubbo, I'm not going out in Dubbo, I'm staying away because the crime's so bad. I've heard it, the mayor said so.
Yeah.
And we saw that in Alice Springs.
We did, absolutely.
Where they're asking the federal government for $50 million to rejuvenate the tourism industry because it's been decimated by crime, or has it? Has it been decimated by crime, or has it been decimated by talking about crime? I'm not going to Alice Springs now because I've heard the crime's so bad. I don't think it's my job to talk down the community.
Yeah.
I think my job is to talk positively about the community and encourage people to come and see us, visit us, live here. And behind the scenes, when I have discussions with Tim Chin, or when I have discussions with the state government, or let the right systems run, in other words, let the police and the lawmakers do their job properly, I'm pretty sure that the state government's aware there's crime across the state.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure there are people there who are working on that now. What am I going to be able to add? So I have asked people...
Is there anything then potentially that, as the mayor, that you can possibly do?
Well, interestingly enough, we had a meeting with Boxar months ago, and I actually said that to the person who came and presented. She was a very impressive presenter. I said, so is there anything within our power? And she said, little things maybe. For example, sometimes if there's an area that's a bit darker, not very well lit, and sometimes some houses in that area might have some more crime because it's darker, maybe by having some enhanced lighting there. So it might be just on the fringe of things like that. So very little that we can do. But I've said to people constantly when they say, fix the crime, I say, fantastic. I'd love to fix the crime because, gee, I would like zero crime. That would be fantastic. What can I do to fix the crime? And they say, well, you're the mayor, you should know. And I say, well, what I know is that as the mayor of the council, I don't have any power to fix the crime. But more to the point, we've got 10 councillors. Everything that I do is representing the views of the council. We've talked about that often. So if there's some great idea there that we can do, and I'm saying, no, don't worry about it, well, if it went to a vote of council, there'd be 9 councillors who'd vote one way and I'd vote the other way, and then I would have to be the mayor representing those views of council. So I don't have any brilliant idea to solve all the crime problems, but if any of the other 9 councillors do have some brilliant idea to solve the crime problems, fantastic.
Yep.
And again, you're right, just to reiterate that, I've never said there's no crime.
Yep.
What I have done is I've talked down crime. I've said, let's do some real comparison of stats, look at how it's changing, and I often look at the Boxar stats, and I don't just look at the raw numbers, I look at the change. How have we gone from the last quarter? Have things improved? Have they found some methods to reduce crime? And we do see that on a regular basis. The crime seems to be reducing, not dramatically, but seems to be reducing a bit, and you feel like, okay, well, things are happening in the right direction there. So you're talking about all that, but again, I've actually said to people, show me anywhere that I've said there's no crime.
Yep. But like even a situation like, as I say, you meet with Tim Chin every 3 months. You catch up with him. Has Tim Chin ever turned around and said to you, Matthew, look, I'm really struggling right here, right now with the crime here in Dubbo. I need your help.
We've offered anything we can do, and we constantly say that, what can we do?
Yeah.
And Tim,
like, from the point of view, I need more police, but I'm not getting any response from the state government. Can you help me?
Yeah, that's right.
And
the best I could do is I could send a letter off to the police minister saying, send more police out here. But no, look, we have that open conversation and that open relationship where it's whatever you need from us, Tim, let us know.
Yeah.
And sometimes there might be some little minor thing that he might ask for in some maybe a letter or things that he's asked for, certainly we've delivered on. But there's nothing where he said, oh, Matt, if you could just go and do that, that'll solve all the crime. Yeah. Years ago I did a thing, and I have actually talked to Tim about this, when car break-and-enters was a big issue down the main street. They weren't break-and-enters, they were just opening doors. So I did a thing with the police where we went along with the police, and so that people didn't think I was trying to break into cars, and we went along to a series of cars, I think it was along Talbot Street from memory, and just flicked the door on each one, to the hand on each one, and just to see how many we found were open. And I was scared about how many were open.
Really? Yeah,
so again, left a little note there, did a bit of media around it saying, well, the mayor's just broken into 20 cars down Talbot Street as a bit of a highlight of, say, lock your car. But the other thing we looked at was how many people had things that were valuable sitting in view. So wallets or phones. Again, the mayor's just broken into 20 cars because they were unlocked, and broken on another 30 cars because there was stuff sitting there that I could see be worth smashing a window to grab. Yeah. So little things like that.
So like awareness raising sort of thing the council can do. Right,
yeah,
okay.
Yeah. So
is there a situation like, from the point of view of, maybe you can help me here, in regards to solving crime in any place, and obviously we're talking about Dubbo, so we're talking here about Dubbo and our region, is there's obviously a number of groups apart from the police that are involved in trying to bring crime down here in Dubbo, is that correct?
There are a huge number of state government agencies and non-government agencies or NGOs, non-government organisations, that are involved in different parts of it. Yep. So Orana Support Service, for example, they do a wonderful job where you've got the ability for them to be used as part of the program to help. So there are all these different agencies, and they're helping homeless people, and they're helping look for accommodation for people. They're helping look at different areas when people are bailed and give them support. So you're right, there are these agencies, and sometimes one of our jobs could be to get some people together to have a conversation. We're not really solving the issue ourselves, but we just get different agencies to talk. But I'm not sure that we should be the ones that are getting state government agencies or NGOs together. We do it sometimes, but they can probably talk to each other anyway. But
you also individually talk to these groups. I know some of these groups you've mentioned. I know that in our podcast you've mentioned the fact you've spoken to these groups. So they obviously talk to you as well. At any point in time, do any of these groups turn around and say, Matt, the council needs to be doing more to help us?
Not really. The conversations are around things that are happening. But if they said, gee, we could solve all these crime problems if council just did X, then we'd be there. Why wouldn't we? Of course.
Yeah, absolutely.
No one wants to see more crime.
Yep.
But I think the most important thing here is you've got to be realistic. I don't want to tell you I can do something to help you with your problem if I know that I just don't have the ability to do that.
Yeah.
If someone says to me, we don't get our garbage bin picked up on time, I say, fantastic, let's just see if I can talk to the contractor and see what the program is and see what time they pick up garbage, because we control that part of the community, but I don't control crime and the various agencies involved with that. So it's one of those challenging things. You don't want to see the crime there, but you also have to be realistic with people.
I agree, and I think it's also about people understanding too the limitations of the role of council and the limitations that the mayor is in those roles as well.
I think sometimes people get excited when they see American shows because in America, the mayor has a lot more power.
True, yeah.
And there are different things that are under the direct control of the mayor or the council, which aren't under the control of councils here in New South Wales or even in Australia. It's a different structure.
It is.
So we, in terms of the mayor and the council, have certain areas of responsibility. And I often say to people, stay in your lane.
Yeah.
We've got enough to do with council. We've got a $180 million budget. We've got a $3 billion asset base. We've got lots of things to do with council to make sure that we get that right, and then to start trying to stick our nose into state government, federal government issues, trying to fix those problems up, that's a pretty big challenge. So I did have someone tell me the other day that they're not happy with the levels of immigration. We've got too much immigration into Dubbo. And I said, well, I don't control that. The federal government controls that. What could I possibly do? Well, she said, well, you make them citizens. You do the citizenship ceremony. I said, that's right. After they've gone through an exhaustive process, the final ceremonial part is that, and I don't know that I've really got the power to say, no, I don't like all these immigrants. I don't want immigration. I'm not doing citizenship. I don't think that would stop it happening. They would have to go through a different process to become a citizen, but why wouldn't we want to be involved in that?
Oh, absolutely. These are always the fun ones, these little moments now. The Cheque presentations to our community groups, these wonderful different community groups out there that work really hard. They're tireless workers, most volunteers in most situations. And it looks like during the week you gave out quite a few cheques, and there was 3 different types of cheque presentations that were given, all at the one ceremony. So I know we've talked a little bit about this on previous podcasts, but talk us through now what council did there during the week.
So we had our 3 different cheque ceremonies. You're quite right. There's still the 3 different funds. You may remember there were 4, and we went, hold on, these 2 here, they're so similar. Why don't we just wrap them into one, add the 2 amounts of money in together and wrap it into one? We're now down to 4, from 4 to 3. That's great.
Slowly bringing down, hopefully down to a 1 level.
And one thing that council certainly discussed, and a new council might proceed with it, they may not, but was certainly discussed to bring those 3 to 1. At the moment, there's still 3. So at the moment, we've got the Community Services Fund, we've also got the Community Events Fund and the Destination Event Fund. So those 2 sound similar, but just to give you an idea, the Destination Event Fund supports events that deliver economic benefits, whereas the Community Events Fund supports events that deliver cultural and social benefits. Slightly different there, and that's where it seems like they are similar. Maybe we get it down to 2 funds. One's just community services, one's just events. But I think there's the ability to make it simpler. We've got volunteer groups, so let's try and break it down and make it a bit simpler. But we gave it some cheques, and you've heard me say it before, I do get the people that receive these cheques to stand up and sing for their supper. They have to stand up. They don't have
Tell
to.
them what you're going to use this money for.
Yeah, and I love hearing the stories because one was a classic where the person who got up and talked about it was $2,500 he received from council. And when I talked about the event that he was organising, I said, how much does that cost you to run? What's the approximate budget? He said, it's about $25,000. So our little $2,500 creates a $25,000 event, which you go, well, that's a pretty good return.
You'd be happy in that return, any sort of investment.
So in our Community Services Fund, I'll run through them quickly because I think it's important.
Absolutely.
Western Region Academy of Sport got $3,523, very specific.
Yeah. So they're sort of a group, though, that's not just in Dubbo. They're sort of around the region here, Western Region.
That's right, but this is supporting Dubbo athletes in particular.
Okay, cool.
Right. Dubbo Melanoma March Group got $5,000. Orana Education and Training Co-op got $6,000, and that was specifically for their garden storage project. That's right. You had Orascon got $2,500. University of Third Age Dubbo Chapter got $5,000. Dubbo and District Can Assist got $15,000. Wiradjuri Wellington Aboriginal Town Common got $2,081.60.
Very specific.
And the Dubbo Show Society got $42,790.
Now, I remember you telling me about this one.
Well,
this is a bit of a different one, though, isn't it?
Well, it's still the same fund, but they're doing some infrastructure there that will be community infrastructure, really. So it's not as if we give them that money to run the show.
Yep.
It's some community infrastructure that will be used by, well, essentially everyone.
Yep.
Now, well, everyone that goes to the showground. Destination Event Fund, I'll run through quickly. Wellington Boot Racing Carnival, $5,000. Stock Group Music Festival, $5,000. Dubbo Winter Whiskey Festival, $3,000. Dubbo Stedford, $5,000. Dubbo Stampede Running Festival, $5,000.
Brilliant.
I did actually say for $5,000 they could have given me a better time in the half marathon. They said for $10,000 they'll talk. So the Cross Cultural Carnivale has $2,000 and Dubbo Motorfest has $5,000. So they're the ones that they're trying
There's some good events there in that.
They are.
Terrific. Yeah, fabulous.
And they're the ones that are basically saying that we can deliver economic benefits. So you look through all those, they're ones that are attracting people to Dubbo and really changing the economy.
Absolutely.
In the Community Events Fund, the Dog Obedience Trials got $500. Dubbo Multicultural Event got $2,000. Geary Lions Christmas Carols got $100.
I remember you telling me about this one before. This is good because that's all they asked for.
That's all they asked for.
That's
they needed
right.
$100 and we said, sure thing, that's a good project.
Next year, go 200, guys.
That's right. Carols by Candlelight got $600. Holy Festival of Colours got $1,500.
Great.
Man from Ironbark Festival, $2,000. Marcus did say at the ceremony that $2,000 goes straight to me for my
your
poetry
Ironbark, yes,
speaking
Man from
fee.
Ironbark recital
That's right.
fee. Excellent.
I did have to just make sure, in case some people in the audience did think that was correct. That,
There's an official disclosure there, people.
That's right. I do the poetry out there for nothing. Under Western Skies got $3,000. Actually, I think that'll be a good one this year.
Yeah, that's not this week, is it?
It is,
Yeah.
or next weekend.
Yeah.
But the good part about that one, it's always a good event, but it's normally held at Dundallimore.
Yeah, right.
And sometimes people, well, they have to know about it, and they don't always attract as many people as I think they should. This year, they're holding it at Victoria Park. So I think they'll attract people that just are driving past going, what's going on there? I'll stop and have a look. So I think that'll be a really good move for them.
Actually, I heard one of the songs from one of the bands there today being played in one of the local radio stations, and it's fantastic. I've never heard of the band, never heard of the song, but it's a cracker.
Yeah, right. And the last one is Teej Festival, $800. So
Teej? What's that?
T-E-E-J.
Never heard that one.
No, so I can't tell you about that one.
Okay.
The gentleman did talk about it briefly there, but
So they're putting $800 in advertising, obviously, so we know about it.
that's possibly it. So well done to all those organisations.
So what's it about, 200,000? What's the figure?
Well, so this is, we basically have the total amount that we have there available now. So essentially, I'd have to break it down to each one, but the Community Services Fund, $81,894.60 was given out there. In the Destination Event Fund, you've got about 20, let me just do that, 10, 20, $30,000 went out in that one. And then in the Community Events Fund, you've got in the vicinity of, it's that 5, 7, so maybe $8,000 in that one.
Okay, so around about 120.
So remember, that's round one, so we do 2 rounds each year.
Yeah, that's where I got that 200,000 figure from. That's right.
Well, 240
Yep.
is if we roll them all into one, that'd be the figure that we'd use, about $240,000.
It's good money, though, isn't it? Like to be passing out. That's wonderful.
Yep.
Yeah, well done to all involved. Now, you put your guest speaker hat on during the week too, because you ducked yourself down there to Canberra, the mighty town of Canberra. My son was down there during the week for the university games, by the way.
He didn't say hello to me.
No, well, he was pretty busy. He was coaching it's a bit of a call out to my son. He was coaching the Newcastle girls basketball team, and they finished in the top 8 in the Nationals.
Wow.
First time that Newcastle University, either male or female, finished the top 8 in the basketball.
Wow, it's good.
Yeah.
All to do with coaching.
Well, I put it down to that. Of course, he's my son, so of course I'll give him a big rap, but I think the girls were pretty handy as well, don't worry. They were a pretty handy team.
Yeah, right.
So, but you're down there, though, not for basketball, but for the Better Futures Forum.
Yeah, and we did mention it last week that this is another example of one of the events that I go to where they paid the accommodation, they paid the travel, they wanted me down there to speak at the forum.
Yep.
And we talked about a bit last week about what that forum was about, but very well received. And just in discussions with people afterwards, you kind of get an idea whether it's been a good discussion and you've delivered well.
Yep.
How many people come up to talk to you afterwards? So I had a number of people come up and talk to me and just wanted some different advice around things. I was really talking about the renewable experience and what the different proponents can do better and what you can do as a community better to make sure you take advantage of that, because I think people are often looking at Dubbo as a leader in this area, because I think we're actually having some good successes with renewables. We've talked about it before. Council is not the consent authority. We don't get to say yes or no to renewables. what our job, in my opinion, is to do is to say, let the state government deal with that and work out whether it's a yes or a no. Let's make sure we deliver economic benefits as much as we possibly can to our community as a result of these renewables.
So was that your audience, other councils that are there and managers, or were they just general public?
No, it wasn't general public. It was certainly a range of people. There were proponents there, so people that are building these various wind farms, solar farms, etc. And they're there for the forum for various different speakers to learn more. So it was good for them to hear things that we'd done that we found a good experience. There were definitely other councils there. There were other community-type organisations that are out there in the renewable space trying to help different people walk through this process, this complicated process, and get somewhere where you're getting good outcomes. So people that are focused on climate action, climate change, and the industries, I think the different things are going to come as a result of all of that. So, a fair bit of focus, I suppose, on just getting things and making it happen. Rather than talking about it, let's see how we can make things happen.
Did you talk about the React Centre?
Surprisingly enough, I did.
Got a bit of a mention, got a run?
It did, and I did talk about that as
what was their response to that?
I suppose it's hard. They didn't burst out in spontaneous applause when I talked about it.
Okay.
And people that talked to me afterwards are talking about some general issues rather than specifically. But I suppose it is, I like to talk about that as an example of come up with something different, come up with something innovative, and then run with that, and you can probably make a difference in the community. So overall, it's good to go to those sort of things. It was a day away from pre-polling for me, which is not ideal.
You've had a busy week, mate.
And there was also a forum on in Dubbo, a candidate forum, which I would have loved to have been at. But I thought my responsibility as mayor still, until midnight tonight, it's still my job. So I still thought it was worthwhile to me to be there to represent Dubbo at that particular forum.
Well done. Now, also during the week, you managed to get up there to your old stomping ground, South High, and you're at the opening of the Gindaymanha. Did I say that right?
Sounds good to me. Saves me saying it.
The Gindaymanha Sports Complex. Now, I had no idea this was being built. This sounds like a fabulous structure that's been built up there. So you better talk us through it, because there's some stuff happening there which, again, I think not just at South High there's going to benefit. I think the community could benefit from this.
Well, absolutely right. And I'll be correct here and say it's the Dubbo College South Campus. And I know it is.
We know South High. It'll always be South High to me, no matter what term of phrase they refer to it as.
The old DSHS, Dubbo South High
Alma
School.
mater right there, you
That's
and me. Part of the alumni.
So this is an impressive complex. It's the main part of it is 2 basketball courts.
Okay.
You've also got some classrooms along the side of those, so you've actually got the ability to do teaching, whether it be normal teaching or whether it be teaching related to some of that sport. But it is designed to be a community accessible area as well. So it's down the back, the Diana Beckett street or lane, I think probably more accurate, along between the footy ovals, the AFL ovals and the school itself. Yep. So you go down there to the back. So it's not in the school ground.
Past where the old band hall used to be there. Is that the one?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Down there. Yep. So along there where there's extra space, there's extra ground there. Yeah. So it's built there, and it's got a separate entrance. So you can come up from the school, but also a separate entrance.
So it's got an external entrance to the school.
So the community could use it. So it was certainly talked about at the opening to say, yes, this is part of the school, definitely, but also for community access. And the builder happened to be there. David Payne Construction won the contract, so David Payne was there. And he was very proud of the flooring, which is a floating floor, like a proper basketball floating floor.
Wow.
I would suggest the best basketball floor in the city.
So I could probably vouch for that, being a basketball coach. I can tell you I've played plenty of years as well. That sounds fabulous.
It would almost be selfish to say that's just for the school to use. I think the idea is this was all state government money, so rather than say it's just for that school, let's see if the community can use it as well.
So is the school prepared to open this up now to groups like the Dubbo Basketball Association to host maybe a Western region round or something like this?
No idea.
Okay.
I have to talk to the school about that.
Fair call.
But it seemed to me that it was designed to be used by the community as well as designed to be used by the school. So it would make sense for that. I don't know how that all worked, what the arrangements are. I was there at the opening and watched the opening, and that was all impressive. The students were pretty excited about it.
Yep.
But the other thing that I really liked about it was they named one of the basketball courts after Megan Dunn. She's now Megan Reeks.
The cyclist.
The cyclist, that's right. And I think that's fantastic. Now, I've got some history with Megan where when we did the
She
first.
didn't like you.
No, good history. You can have good history with people. When we did the first tour to O-Rock, they're talking about 2013.
Yes.
We talked about how we would do this and how we promote it. And someone said to me, why don't you get Megan Dunn to ride? She's recently retired.
Yeah.
And she's a dual Commonwealth Games gold medalist. You went, oh, that sounds pretty impressive. So I rang Megan, talked to Megan and said, we'd love you to come along. And so she did. She helped us promote that very first tour to O-Rock.
Fantastic.
And rode along with us the whole way. And she was fantastic on that trip. She was fantastic when we had her being a guest speaker at various events. People love to hear from her because it's not every man and his dog that's got a couple of Commonwealth Games gold medals.
No, you
In
have to be a
fact,
pretty special athlete to get one of those.
if you put you and me and Megan Dunn in a room, amongst the three of us, we would have a total of 2 Commonwealth Games gold medals.
Yeah. Well, I know how many I've got. I know how many you've got. So well done, Megan.
That's right. And so she was fantastic on that. And so I thought that was nice. Now, what was quite interesting, I spoke to Megan there. I was pretty excited that this was named after. I got a photo with her with the Megan Dunn court just in the background there.
Yep.
And so I spoke to Megan about that. And she said the funny part was that she was heavily in training. By the time she was in high school, she'd obviously been identified as a huge talent and obviously doing work, I assume, with the AIS, but basically she couldn't play sports because it was too much of a risk of injury. So playing some netball, she might have twisted an ankle or she might have hurt a finger or whatever.
I could just imagine the South High coaching staff back in those days, especially if you're a cyclist coaching, saying, we've got a Commonwealth potential champion here, let's get her out, we're going to do really well at the National Games this year. She comes along and says, look, I'm sorry, sir, I can't, or ma'am, I can't cycle because the Academy of Sport down there in Canberra's told me not to, but I'm prepared to debate.
That's right. So she was in the debating team, but absolutely, I think it was, and again, I assume direction from AIS to say, don't play sports because there's too much risk of injury, any sort of sport where you might be ball sports or whatever. So she found it quite ironic that here's the Megan Dunn court named after her, and she said, I'm not actually that great at basketball.
But I'll happily claim the title of the court there for me.
Well, she was quite chuffed about it, which is nice.
Awesome.
But to have your old school do that and reach out, and the first thing she said when they reached out to her was, are we allowed to name it after you? And she said, well, I assume so. If I say yes, then absolutely.
That's right. Yeah. I don't think I need to get my mother to sign off me on this one. I think it's all right.
Yeah. Now,
actually, the other thing is Megan, she lives in town now too, doesn't
absolutely.
she?
So she's got Narellan Pools, the business. So her and her husband own that.
Yeah.
And she was talking about Tour de Rock because she had a baby about 3.5 years ago, I think, from memory.
Yeah.
But she was talking about Tour de Rock, and she said, I loved that, and that was fantastic, and the camaraderie and all the rest of it because it was a great group. But we broke ground in terms of creating that whole event, and Megan was an important part of that. But she said, I'm keen to get back into it. Now, I probably can't use my child as an excuse anymore. 3 years ago, 3.5 years ago, I had that. So I'll get back into some training. And the next tour at O-Rock, I'd love to be a part of it again.
Fantastic.
So I haven't told the committee, well, the committee might listen to this, but I haven't told the committee that she's keen to be part of it. It would absolutely be wonderful.
Brilliant.
On the back of Megan being involved, we had some wonderful people after her. So people like Robbie McEwen, who's a multiple winner of a stage or stages at the Tour de France. And I know when I spoke to Robbie about it, it was like, oh, we've had other people like multiple Commonwealth Games gold medalist, Megan Dunn. So that followed on from there. We had Sarah Carrigan, gold medalist at Olympic Games. We had...
Was it Mike Tomalaris?
Mike Tomalaris.
Thank you for saying that. I was just getting a big tongue-tied on that
That's
one.
right. We had Matt Keenan. We had Brad McGee. So we've had some great guest riders.
Yeah. You pretty much had the whole Tour de France commentary squad from the sound of things.
We had that, and we had some Olympic Games gold medalists. So a range of things. I did say to Megan that was a big part of it. But look, I do run into Megan from time to time around, so it's great to hear from her. But I think that was a nice recognition for Megan.
Yeah, wonderful. Well done again to everyone involved. All right, mate. Well, look, being our last podcast for this term of council and being our 100th podcast, I think it's probably the time now to sort of to maybe just sort of think to yourself, okay, is there anything, being on the last podcast and being the final chance as mayor here of Dubbo, to is there anyone you want to thank, or in particular in regards before the elections begin on on Saturday?
Well, it is an incredible honour to be a councillor. There's no doubt about that at all. It's quite humbling. And in some ways, a bit scary as well when you stand for election. I remember back in 2004, you went, I'm going to have a go at this. I don't know how it's all going to go. And even when you stand there at pre-polling, as we have been all week, handing out, one of the other candidates said to me, I feel very uncomfortable asking people to vote for me. It almost seems a bit too egotistical that I'm saying, with all these people to stand, all these options, can you please put a number one beside my name? So that's a bit, as I say, daunting. And then when you do get elected, it's pretty humbling. Oh, wow, that many people put a number one beside my name, because it's not your 20 friends and family that put a number one beside your name, or you hope they do.
Yes.
But in this particular election, for example, my prediction is the quota will be 2,550.
So it's a fair number.
That's right. You need that many people to put a number one beside your name. Now, there's preferences. You mightn't get that many in the end, but that's what you're aiming for. That's a lot of people. That's not your family and friends. That's a lot of people. So
Absolutely.
A few things I want to talk about. Thank you to the community for allowing me to be a councillor by electing me at the last election. That, again, is a huge privilege. Thank you to my fellow councillors for electing me as mayor. That, again, is a huge honour and a privilege. And I do take that very seriously. That is a huge responsibility and a huge honour, and that's fantastic. And again, I do find myself very thankful that I'm doing that role and able to do that role.
Obviously, in many ways, sorry to interrupt you there, buddy, but in many ways, I look at it as if the fact, like, a lot of sports have 11 players. Excuse me. They have 11 players, and you need your captain of the team, but at the end of the day, it's a team. Yeah. Now, I know you're going to disagree on certain, that's the whole point of being independent, rolling through as a council, but you still have to get this team together, and they've still got to be able to perform.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's, and we've all seen over the years in many, many different sort of forms and functions how if a team is not cohesive, and if the captain can't bring the team in together, there's failures across the board. And I think you've done an incredible job, really, with this current team to bring them together to form the team you have. So, you know, it's a big part of the role, isn't it, to bring a team of people together, individuals from all walks of life, to come together in a cohesive fashion to, you know, make decisions here for the betterment of our city.
And it's the expression that comes to mind is a champion team versus a team of champions.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everyone's heard that expression in sport, that a champion team will beat a team of champions any day because the champion team is there working for each other, working for the team. A team of champions might say, well, I'll do this because I'm a champion player, and that might not be the best thing for the overall team. So with a team of councillors, it's the same thing.
Absolutely.
You want everyone working together, have debate, have discussion, whatever it might be, but then ultimately you work together. If you've got a group of individuals that are saying, I'm here working for Dubbo, but I'm doing it in my way, then you're probably not going to get the best outcomes for the community. And with that debate, hopefully you get the best decisions by that healthy debate.
Yep.
So that is certainly a significant part of that whole process for that champion team, if you like, rather than the team of champions. So that's significant. And you don't get to choose your team.
No, that's
You don't get to go
absolutely.
to the selectors and say, okay, I don't think Jimmy's playing that well. Can you put Mary in instead? The community, democracy, gives you the team.
Yep.
And then you've got to work with whatever that team is. And what I do like is that I had a team of councillors in 2011 when I was first elected as mayor, and I think I managed to get them together and we did things in a cohesive fashion. And then there was a new team in 2012 after the 2012 election, and I think I got them together and I think we work well for the next term of council before the amalgamation. And then in 2021, it was a different team again, and I hope I've got that team together and we've worked.
Oh, I feel as though you have. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's good. Thank you. But the staff, I want to thank the staff as well, because we can have some great ideas at council and come up with some fantastic things. And then ultimately, we want the staff to go and do the work, go and actually undertake those things. So we need a professional team. We need staff that are really dedicated to the job, and I think we've got that. I mean, there's over 500 staff. I don't know every one of those staff members. I'm sorry, I don't know you all. Know you all by name, but we need them to be doing the job, and we need them to have confidence in the council team and councillors.
Oh, absolutely. Isn't that a big part of it, which people forget, is the fact if you've got 500 people there, that, you know, the vision of how we're moving forward is directed by the councillors, but you've got 500 people there, they've got to make that vision come to reality.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely essential. So I'll just mention briefly the councillors. I think anyone that wants to learn more about them, at the 15th of August council meeting, I did go through and actually talked about them in a bit more detail in terms of what they contributed to council, but I'll just run through them briefly. So we had Lewis Burns on there. Lewis is not standing again at this election, but Lewis was on there, traditional owner, and I think added a lot of value to council. Had Shibley Chowdhury on there as well. Now, there's a great story. Only moved to Australia in 2012 approximately, so he's been in Australia for 12 years and on our council. Now, that's a reflection of the 18% of people that have been born overseas and live here. Shibley's one of those 18%, so that's
wonderful.
fantastic as well. Vicky Etheridge was our only returning councillor to this term of council.
Is that right? Vicky was, okay.
So that was her. Jess Goff, a young female mother, business person in Wellington.
Yes.
So again, someone
Jess is standing again, isn't she?
Jess is standing again, that's right. So again, there's someone who is bringing a different angle, a different lens to what's happening on council. Richard Ivey, another Wellington councillor, deputy mayor. He's been the deputy mayor for the whole term. And I've enjoyed being able to bounce things off Richard before I might go further afield to explore my ideas differently. Damien Mann, unfortunately, is not standing again, but Damien had that good financial perspective from his business now.
Absolutely.
Pam Wells, so sister of Lewis Burns. Not many people knew they were brother and sister.
I didn't realise that too. Just mentioned us then. Is that
so
right?
different surnames.
Yeah.
But just to give you an idea of the diversity on council and different ideas, there's two people, both Aboriginal obviously, brother and sister, but in the voice debate, we didn't take a position on the voice. We didn't think it was appropriate for council. We did hold a forum where we had people on the yes side, people on the no side, so the community can come along and learn more about it. And in the voice debate, Pam and Lewis sat on both sides, one on yes, one on no. And in the forum we held, we had some community members in that forum. We had Pam on one side and Lewis on the other side.
Isn't that wonderful? Like even in the same family, you're entitled to have different opinions, just like in council.
Yeah, so Matt Wright, former president of the Chamber of Commerce, so he's obviously standing again there as well. And again, someone that I think's got a bright, long future on council.
Yes.
And you also got Josh Black, who's the Labor Party representative. He's standing again as well, standing for the Labor Party. So different group, different variety there. And of those, 7 are standing again. So at the elections being held this weekend, then there will be 11 councillors, because you remember we had 10 with the wards. In the last election, the referendum got rid of the wards, so now there's just 11 with no wards. So if all 7 were returned, for example, which I hope they are, because we've worked well with that team, there'll be at least 4 new councillors. Maybe not all 7 get returned, but there's at least 4 new councillors anyway. So that'll be an interesting dynamic. I actually feel it's a bit like Big Brother, where they introduce someone new. So you've got the group, they learn the dynamics, they're kind of learning about each other, and then they'll introduce an intruder, or they'll introduce someone new, and then suddenly the dynamic might change a little bit.
As long as you don't get the voice coming, it's time to go.
Hopefully that voice doesn't come through. But I think that'll be interesting. And look, I've been in council before where you've had that same dynamic, where you've had a number of returning councillors and some new ones come along, and you've really got to learn about each other and learn how you work together, and people might think similar to other people. So, look, it'll be a challenge. We've got to get through an election first.
Well, look, my hat goes off to anybody who's prepared to put their hand up to stand as for an older person, or I could refer to them as an older person, of course, they're councillors these days, due to the nature of the job these days. It's a very tiresome. It's you're open to criticism. That the world, unfortunately, has, I think, become a bit nastier in the way that they respond to people in general who are trying to do the right thing by a community. And I think everyone's going to have their individual opinions, but it's a tough gig, and to put your hand up and to put yourself forward in the modern world is a huge vote of thanks from my part anyway. So to everybody who's standing in the elections, I wish you all the very best. I think the current term of council done a fabulous job, and particularly to yourself, Matt, as the captain of the team, well done.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Well, mate, we've got towards the end of this, and this is... But before we sort of do our final sort of send-offs, we always finish our podcast with our Limerick of the Week. So being the 100th episode today, I'm sure you've got something very, very special planned for us.
So that means we've done 100 limericks. Well, after
we
today,
have
anyway.
done 100 limericks.
Yeah.
What's the Guinness Book of Record for limericks on podcasts?
That's it, 100. We've got it.
Surely we must hold the record.
Well, it would seem a sensible record.
I've got to get in contact with with that little Guinness Book of Records there and ask them to say, I want you to put a special new area in, limericks in a podcast. Who's got the most?
Well, I encourage people to go back and listen to 100 limericks. I'd be interested myself to see the various topics.
See if you've improved.
But obviously, all I've got to do in this limerick today is wrap up it's 997 days since the council was declared as elected on the 22nd of December. So 997 days should be pretty easy to wrap up on a limerick, shouldn't it? So
you'd have to do it. Surely an easy one for you.
Let's see how we go. So this is it. This is the final limerick for this term of council to wrap up everything. And here we go. 997 days we've worked in a myriad of ways Cohesive and strong, we've steered Dubbo along, building a future that forever stays.
Well done. I'd give you a little clap, but, from the audience's point of view, there's no sort of point put us seeing it. But, mate, look, thank you so much for everything you've done. I've really enjoyed every single podcast we've done. It's been an absolute pleasure working with you over the course of the last 2.5 years. Look, I do hope the fact we get the chance to kick back around again in the not too distant future, but all the very best as well for Saturday, and to all the rest of the people out there as well. I wish them all the best too who are standing.
Thank you, and straight from the Mayor's mouth, over and out.
Thank you very much.
Straight from the Mayor's mouth with Matthew Dickerson from Dubbo Regional Council.